Good day, my name is Cassie, my surname is Skitter, I'm the CEO of Health Window, and today I want to talk to you about some risks which your brands have that lies beyond the pill. Charles Everett Koop, former US Surgeon General, stated that drugs don't work in people who don't take them. He seemed to be stating the obvious, but if adherence rates are 50%, it means that half of the time your drugs are not taken. And that might create perceptions about their efficacy if patients do not use them. So within the next few slides, I'm going to cover three main topics as follows. The first risk is the brand risk associated with poor levels of real-world efficacy. If patients do not stay on their therapy and they become non-adherent, they will still probably go back to the doctor after a few months. The doctor has no visibility of what their adherence rates were, and if he measures blood pressures or cholesterol levels and it's uncontrolled, he will make the direct conclusion that it was the product that didn't work. In reality, it might have been the patient's non-adherence. Secondly, Salesforce is working really hard to win scripts. Quite often we see that that goes towards no growth. They are generating the new scripts, but because it's replenishing patients that seek therapy, all they're doing is they are creating churn instead of creating growth. And lastly, pharmacy will come to favor products that have adherence attached to it. If a product brings back a patient into your store 10 times a year, as opposed to another product which brings the patient back just 6 times a year, it makes a lot of sense for those pharmacists to favor the product that has adherence rates attached to it, or high adherence rates attached to it. If we retrace pharma's steps that got us here, we would have seen that we went through this blockbuster period where there was remarkable research and innovation. That innovation generated products that cater for most of the prevalent chronic diseases, and subsequently the demand for chronic disease products have near sufficiently been filled. Product improvements are often considered to offer marginal additional benefit, and pharma tries to adapt by either playing the switching game or trying to launch specialty products to new markets or small pockets of opportunity that they want to pursue. The needs have changed, and where we are going should be directed based on needs from the market. Instead of wanting products, the need is now for disease control. Stakeholders are looking for outcomes. They're no longer just looking for products. Real-world evidence is the buzz. You read about it everywhere, and poor adherence dramatically influences real-world outcomes. Clinical trial results are just not valid if the patients don't stay on therapy and take the drugs. So unfortunately, doctors do not link poor outcomes to poor adherence, but rather to a poor product or efficacy of the product. I read a really good article called Beyond the Pill, and I can refer you to the site as on the screen, but I want to quote from this article. Two ladies explaining that the unmet needs are no longer the treatments themselves, but the systems and services that optimize their use throughout the patient journey. And that is what lies beyond the pill, is what makes the drug world work in the real world and provides real world efficacy, rather than just trying to get your product produced from a factory and shipped to where there might be a need for it. Firstly is the issue of real world efficacy versus clinical trial efficacy. And the topic I've chosen here is why doctors don't believe your efficacy claims but might nod politely. If I look at the data from pharmacies on patients that bought ACE inhibitors, each line on the screen represents a patient. The months are listed at the top, and a 1 in the cell means that they had a dispense, a 0 means that they had no dispense. So on line 1, in January this patient had 1 dispense of an ACE inhibitor. In February they did not have a dispense of an ACE inhibitor, which reflects non-adherence. The issue is that these patients need to go back to the doctor after 6 months. So I have 12-month views here, but 6 months down the line, that is when they should visit their doctor to get a repeat evaluation. If I just remove the last part of the data set and look at what the doctor would have seen at this time from these patients. They started on therapy about 6 months ago, and you will see that some patients here at the bottom have 100% compliance rate. If I quickly look, I can see 5 patients in the bottom half of the table, or 6, that bought their medicine every single month. If the doctor sees these patients, he's going to have the idea that these drugs work. The problem is the patients like on line 4, that had only 1 to 3 out of the 6 dispenses. And lots of these patients missed 2 to 3 to 4 and even 5 dispenses. If you just calculate that, that they are the ones that have the 100% compliance rate, but 40% of these patients did not have the necessary adherence rate to achieve desired disease control levels. So the doctor's perception will be, they walk in and they're not controlled. He has no view on this kind of data, so there's something wrong with the product. If necessary, they will change the regimen, they will change to another product, they might even increase the dosage, which would be potentially a mistake because it was not a dosage issue, it was a non-adherence issue. For the doctor, it means two things. If the patient stopped therapy 3 months prior to him having to visit the doctor is going to lose out on that repeat visit. The second one is that re-evaluation, if it does happen and the patient was non-adherent, carries tremendous brand risk for the pharmaceutical company if the patient was non-adherent, because the doctor's perception is going to be that it had suboptimal outcomes. The second issue is for the pharmacists. They run businesses. Quite often they do not see themselves as business people, although some are doing excellent jobs at running their pharmacies as businesses, which means they can better serve patients with the money they generate from their business. There is a distinct preference from pharmacists for products that have adherence attached to it compared to products that do not. If we look at the data on a one patient, I can see that quite often patients have 3 or 4 product lines. The first issue is that some months they just don't buy at all, like in month 2. The other issue is that when they buy, they do not buy everything that they should. So in month 1, they didn't buy chronic product number 2. If we manage them, sorry, let me just stop there. Total spend by this patient at his pharmacy was 670 Rand, lots of non-adherence within that, and the basket values are deflated. He should spend about 410 Rand every single month if they bought all their products, but they spend between 270 and 310. It seems like they're trying to work in a budget to not exceed 310 Rand here. But they buy down, they skip some products. If we change that, if we look at managing these patients and turning some of those red cells, or sorry, some of those missed cells into revenue, suddenly the value of this patient goes up from 670 Rand to 1,650 in just 4 months. So if we can get patients to buy everything they should and to buy every month in which they should, the value to the pharmacy is tremendous. That subsequent value of what patients do that are managed for improved adherence can be shown in this 3 graphs generated in the Saudi Arabia implementation of a health window program. The first graph on the left just shows you that the average unmanaged patient spent around 255 reals on his chronic medication in 6 months, whereas the managed patients spent 937. So it's almost tripled, more than tripled the value of a patient in just 6 months. The add-on benefit was that these patients also spent about 25% more in the front shop. So as the frequency of store visits went up, they're also buying other products in the front shop, which resulted in the total value of these patients being almost 1,000 reals higher than an unmanaged patient, a managed patient versus unmanaged. And these results have literally not been replicated in the rest of the world. I've gone through many of the adherence companies' websites. I simply can't find similar results for pharmacy. What pharma then does is they often leverage that. The investment into a pharmacy's adherence program delivered by Health Window gives us data. So the pharmacy might use that, or the pharmaceutical can use that and say, well, pharmacy, I'm giving you 8.2 customer visits per annum, whereas all these other pharma companies are generating 4.2. Why would you switch someone to their product away from my product? Isn't it better for the patient to be on my product? He's going to have better outcomes. You're going to have a repeat customer that visits your pharmacy almost twice as often as the unmanaged patients. The third issue is the waste in Salesforce effort and often in switching strategies. The criticism against Salesforce and all the retrenchments we've seen is probably unwarranted. It's not their issue that sales aren't growing, and I'll highlight that shortly. Salesforce is quite often paid a lot of money to call on doctors, persuade them to script a product, which they do. Quite often, alternative strategies are to visit the pharmacy and persuade them to switch a patient onto a certain product. The question then is, where are all those new patients? After all that money is spent, where are the new patients' sales going? Do we have growth? If I look at the chronic drug market in South Africa, I can see it grew from 2.05 million sold in January to 2.1 million sold in December over 2016. So it's extremely mediocre performance in that market. If you think about non-adherence, that says adherence is 50%, so chronic sale should probably be twice that. After all that money is spent, the company cars, the company cell phones, the Salesforce headcounts, Salesforce managers, all of that resulted in almost no growth. And that's why Salesforce as a switching, or Salesforce as a growth strategy, or switching as a growth strategy on its own does not suffice. Retain their customers better.